Salutations, Imperial citizens and battle brothers. It's Brother Tobias, and I went to the Castle Clash GT in the beautiful Bad Liebzell. After the last data slate hit, the Monitorum field manual was not kind to the Ultramarines. My 3-0 list from the last tournament report I made went up by over 100 points, so I had to adjust. In order to adjust, I decided paint up an entire new unit of Ultramarines from my collection. I went with a unit of Bladeguard veterans and gave them a Bladeguard Ancient, which in turn gave my Marneus Calgar unit a cheaper unit than the Victrix Guard I was running before. I'm losing a lot of tools with the Blood Surge and the reactive move and a lot of damage. However, if I can get them on the objective and have their new and improved -1 to hit ability, they might actually be better. Am I correct? Maybe. Other than that, I also painted a 3rd land speeder, because now that 3 of them always cost the same, I might as well just run the 3rd one, and I just wanted to see how that would go. My last switch is adding a chaplain instead of the lieutenant with combi weapon. The lieutenant with combi weapon is very expensive now, and he's best in a list that wants to do actions like the Gladius. In Take and Hold, you don't do a single primary action, which means the only thing he gives us is reroll once to wound on one objective, and I honestly think that's no longer worth it. I decided to downgrade my lieutenant to a solo chaplain who's not leading anything to make some points. Now, a solo chaplain isn't very impressive. You don't get any of his abilities for combat. He's not that tough, even though he has a 4-up invuln. He's just okay. But the one thing he actually does is once per game, we can remove Battle Shock from one of our units at the beginning of a phase, which is incredibly good in our Take and Hold list, because it might allow us to have a unit with a -1 to wound buff active when we need it. The list is on screen right now. I heard the comments about how the last list was a bit too bright to read, so I hope this one will be a bit more legible. Let's go over everything. We are still running Marneus Calgar, but this time with a Bladeguard Ancient and a unit of Bladeguard veterans, Captain Titus with his Wardens of Ultramar and 6 additional Bladeguard veterans, an Apothecary Biologis with the Seals of Reconquest and 10 heavy intercessors, a solo captain with jump pack and the Liberatum enhancement, a solo chaplain with nothing, 5 assault intercessors with jump packs, 5 reavers, 5 scouts, 3 land speeders, a storm speeder hammer strike, and a Storm Speeder Thunderstrike. This list adds up to exactly 2,000 points, and let's see how it went. The tournament did not start out with the greatest start. We played against the player who ended up going 2nd at the overall event, and we lost pretty badly. The problem was pretty apparent, and something I honestly didn't know until this point, because I haven't played that matchup yet. Our opponent was on Red Zone Cohort, Admech with the Priority Assets Primary. Priority Assets Primary is pretty annoying, because in order for us to score Primary, we have to hold 1, 2, 3 objectives at the end of the turn, and in Primary we have to hold 2 objectives for a 5 point, and we have to hold more than our opponent for the 4 extra points. So if we want to have the big primary, we have to hold 4 objectives basically, while our opponent only holds 2, which is honestly pretty difficult to do, because this map has 4 objectives on it, which makes it laughably easy for the priority assets player to just push the button here or here. And yeah, we have to fight an uphill battle, basically. We have to put stuff into the objectives every single turn, while our opponent just has to hold 1, kill something, and then push the button. And that basically gives them a 10-point score, while we have to do borderline impossible tasks to get a 9 point, and this just didn't work out well. We went second, which was pretty bad because the red zone cohort said we have to do a bunch of battle shocks. I took the damage on turn 1, but we still have to take battle shocks if we're close to our deployment. It was like this, and then 6 inches out too, like this. Everything in this whole area here has to take battle shock tests in our opponent's turn every single time, and that is just absurd because there are 3 of the objectives we have to hold are in this zone, which makes this incredibly annoying. Our opponent also brought the triple Scorpius disintegrators and a lot of units to screen and make space for them, and all of this damage-free shooting was pretty bad for our free wound based list. In addition, the actually worst thing about this list was the infiltrator squads. AdMech infiltrators have a really annoying rule. If we end up in combat with them, we have to do a -1 battle shock, and it's -2 if a battle line unit is close by, which is really annoying because the main way we want to solve a problem in this detachment is to charge it with our big OC units, and we just get battle shocked if we do that, because even if there's no battle line on this is like getting close to a 50-50, and we might already be battle shocked, and then we have to take tests again at -2 if we get tagged by them. Yeah, it was overall pretty annoying. We ended up losing this game pretty badly, and yeah, I don't feel like there was much I could do about it. Maybe on the Dawn of War deployment, there would be a bit more options for us to just attack our opponent from different angles and get out of the deployment zone faster. Actually, now that I think about it, I actually managed to land a speeder here and try the 7-inch charge out of Deep Strike onto my opponent's 4 OC they put in the backfield, but I failed the charge. So that didn't even work. And yeah, we ended up losing pretty badly and were banished to the lower tables after this game. Game 2 on the evening was actually a pretty fun one. I got matched up into Tyranids, and it was a take and hold mirror match. So both of us were trying to hold objectives while also taking away our opponent's objectives. We have an incentive to take the enemy home objective away to deny primary points, and other than that, it is a clear-cut fight. There's a center objective, one we have to fight over, and then everyone has an expansion objective. Now, my opponent deployed pretty conservatively because they were afraid of the speeders we can drop on turn 1. So there was only like a lictor in the center, and then most of the other stuff was hiding. And I actually just managed to go in with my big Titus brick and a few speeders to kill that lictor to deny the beacon it was holding, and I just kept my speeders mostly in reserve because I didn't have to drop them. My heavy intercessor squad held this objective. Funny enough, they actually got turn 2 battle shocked by the stupid shadow in the warp, and we lost this objective for 1 turn, and yeah, that is what happened. Our opponent had double Gene Stealers with Broodlords, with the Scout 8 and the wound rerolls, and that unit charged into our big Titus brick, and they did a lot of damage. It was pretty nuts. They did a lot of damage, but we bounced back. We killed that unit on the backswing. The chaplain came in clutch here because we actually failed the -1 battle shock against the Broodlord's remains. It was 1 Broodlord and like 2 Gene Stealers left, and Titus got battle shocked, but thankfully at the start of the movement phase we were able to unbattle shock Titus with the chaplain. So yeah, overall this basically ended up being like Calgar had to take care of the Zoanthropes with the Neurotyrant who dropped over here, and we killed them. We also took care of this Exocrine in the same manner, and then Calgar walked into the enemy home objective on the back turn of when our opponent put the Trigon onto our home objective. But since it was just a Trigon with basically nothing except for a Feel No Pain, we managed to whittle it down with the Captain and 2 of the speeders and got done with it. The other Broodlord unit actually managed to finish Titus off, and we failed the 2-up on the Fight on Death. We ended up losing Calgar over here when the Broodlord came back, but the damage was kind of done because we had our center objective cleared up. Our opponent had to shift focus back to the home zone. The Tyrannofex didn't get to shoot any vehicle for basically the entire game. We managed to hide in angles and use the Fire and Fade to avoid it the entire time. And basically all I did at the last turn, because we went in, we went second. I just went in and I repositioned the heavy intercessors from my expansion to the center after stickying it, and then I just scored the big 13 on the last turn, which, in addition to making sure our opponent only ever got to hold like these two, meant we were way ahead on points. Yeah, that was a fun game. Our opponent was pretty scared of the speeders, and in the end it turns out that even though 2 out of 3 of our big bricks were dead, we actually managed to use the speeders pretty effectively to whittle down our opponent's units every single turn. That was a win for us. The third game rolled around and I don't have much to say about it. We played an Ultramarine mirror match. I didn't take a picture during the game. I apologize for just having my case here. It was another game against priority assets, so we had the same problem as with the AdMech game, where it was 6 objectives. We have to work incredibly hard to do something. Our opponent was running a Vengeful Host and Flame Firestorm hybrid with a Victrix Guard block and a Bladeguard unit with Ignore All Modifiers with the Champion of Humanity, and a Land Raider Redeemer. I decided I just wanted to try something and went really aggressive into our opponent. The Redeemer was deployed over here, and because of lackluster screening, our speeders managed to touch this terrain turn 1, and I shot the Land Raider with a bunch of speeders and actually killed it on turn 1. So I took the land speeder out, and then my Calgar unit moved up and charged into his Calgar unit. We were caught by a rapid ingress from Uriel Ventris over here, and then our opponent rolled really well on save, so our Calgar unit with all the buffs didn't actually kill our opponent's Calgar unit. We left Calgar and Sicarius alive. The Victrix were dead, but that happened. And then with the Lieutenant for fallback and charge, the Bladeguard unit with Ignore Modifiers actually connected with the Titus unit, and in an absolutely absurd amount of dice being rolled, they killed our unit from full to dead. It was insane. It was 24 attacks from the Bladeguard, 5 from the Lieutenant, and then another 6 from Uriel. Uriel rolled 5 sustained hits, and with everything wounding on 2s and being lethal, we were handed like 38 saves and failed like half of that and lost the entire squad. It was crazy. I have never seen the Titus unit go down in like 1 activation. That was insane. Yeah, with that, the game was pretty much over. Our opponent also got pretty lucky here, connecting a charge with the small aggressor unit into one of our speeders and killed it. We actually managed to deep strike charge our jump pack captain into the opponent's Orcsbane chaplain, but unfortunately our captain couldn't perform and failed to do the critical amount of devastating wounds to kill them. I think we killed 3 of the Vanvets, and then the captain got clapped back, so another L for Captain Copium. He didn't do very well, and yeah, in the end I just lost the game because I ran out of stuff. The Eradicator unit with the Melter, which were in the transport, was still a problem. 3 Bladeguard veterans actually managed to kill 5 Reavers over here, which was pretty annoying because they were contesting the Speeder and the Bladeguard and actually battle shocked them successfully. But yeah, Vengeful Host, of course, can turn the battle shock off in the next command phase, so yeah. This one was a bit annoying, but I played a bit more aggressive than I normally would have. I also drew Bring It Down on turn 1, so I just wanted to see if I can Doom Drop a Redeemer on turn 1 and how that would go. I think if I don't lose the entire Titus unit, and if I actually at least get Sicarius out of the Calgar unit too, then maybe it would have been a different story, but as it turned out, we just couldn't make that matchup work. And honestly, it was once again a lot of problems came from the primary. Our opponent just has to hold here or here and do an action somewhere with like anything, and we have to contest 4 objectives for the entire game in order to do anything in this matchup. And yeah, this has been a pretty annoying thing for us to play against. Day 2 starts, and I am matched against Dark Eldar. Pretty interesting. It was the Sky Splinter Assault with, I think, 5 transports in total, and the Witch Cult detachment, so the list was able to go Recon. Because I was playing Take and Hold, my opponent actually played the fixed secondary, so they went Assassinate and engage on all fronts, so that basically means if they are in all of the table quarters, they will get points for the secondary and for the primary. So our opponent only has to do one single-minded game plan, which is kill us for Assassinate and the primary, and get into every table quarter for the secondary and the primary. What our opponent might not have considered, however, is that we just have to kill enough units for them to no longer make it into all of the quarters, and that is actually what happened, because I went first and our opponent didn't manage to get a table quarter score at the last turn, because we left our opponent with 1 witch unit and 1 character over here. Like, there was nothing left to do table quarters with, and that was good for us. Yeah, so our opponent was also scared of the speeders and deployed pretty weirdly. We had a big unit of succubi here, we had scourges here, and we had a raider full of incubi with Lady Malice over here, which did actually go to the center, and the incubi charged my Titus unit, and they did good work. They killed all the humans and the Bladeguard down to 4 models, but yeah, we just punched them back, and we basically left them at 2 members remaining. And because our opponent was sending the incubi, also the Drazar squad over here. The Drazar squad actually killed Calgar with precision, which was super annoying, but I did manage to fight on death and kill a bunch of jet bikes, engaging my speeder with the pylon. So yeah, we did trade resources here, but the incubi were all gone, and then we had a Lilith witch unit killing a speeder here, and then killing the apothecary out of my heavy intercessor squad. But at that point, that didn't even really matter, because the heavy intercessors just completely mopped up the witches in like 1 extra combat. And yeah, our opponent was scared of the speeders and wanted to hide the important asset, but what actually happened is we just killed our opponent pretty swiftly. We were holding this objective for all 5 turns of the game. In the end, we had all 3 of these, and we even managed to get the enemy home objective on turn 1, because we had 1 speeder left, which actually managed to reposition into the backfield. Our captain unfortunately failed his 7-inch deep strike charge, which was annoying, but when he was countercharged by 5 witches behind the wall, he actually survived on 1 wound and killed them in return, so can't be too mad at the guy. But yeah, overall, this was a victory for the speeders once again. The speeders were excellent in this matchup, and they did fantastically. The last game of the event was against a player I really like. This is one of my favorite human beings. He is such a cool guy. I love this man. He's really funny, and I do believe that this is a matchup. If we played this game 10 times, I would lose 6 of them. I think this matchup favors the Emperor's Children I played against for the first time very badly. So it was another take and hold versus priority assets. So the usual problem happened. We have to hold 4 objectives realistically to push the game forward, while our opponent only has to hold basically this one and then kill something and do the action somewhere and get something. So our opponent was playing double Defiler, double Demon Prince with 2 Infractor packages and a bunch of spawn for scoring. And yeah, our opponent went first. The Rhino scouted into this little spot here. We got turn 1 charged by 5 Infractors, almost killing the speeder. It survived on 1 wound and tying up the heavy intercessors. Our opponent pushed the button here, staged the Defilers up, which was pretty difficult to do, and we just had to box our entire army behind those 2 terrain features. Remember earlier when I was complaining about the hammer and anvil deployment because it was difficult to get into the opponent's zone? This is infinitely worse. This Crucible of Battle deployment is horrendous. You can't hide anything in this deployment. It is crazy. And the Defilers, they can just move 18 inches out, touch the terrain, and then shoot us. But yeah, so next turn, we just had to sacrifice the Reavers to contest here, to give our opponent a 0 for that primary. We cleaned up those Infractors, and then we just had to watch as the 2 Demon Princes crashed into our lines. The Defilers started to shoot and move forward, and yeah, that was a bad stuff. I rapid ingressed my captain with jump pack onto the enemy home objective, which was held by Lucius the Eternal. I had to deep strike on the terrain feature because otherwise both Defilers would have been able to see him. Unfortunately, my opponent's Lucius made the 10-inch charge and killed my captain, who failed his fight on death. So I effectively spent 100 points and 2 CP to do nothing at all, and yeah, that was pretty bad. The Defiler here made a slight positioning mistake. It wanted to kill the 5 Reavers I had behind this wall, so it exposed itself a little, which gave me a bit of an opening, because I deployed triple speeders down here and managed to kill this one Defiler. It came down to the last wound, because we rolled really badly on the wound rolls of the Melters, but the last wound was taken off by a re-rolled free-up armor save from one of the Gatlings, and that actually took down the Defiler over here, which gave us an opening into the game, because Titus managed to sit into this spot, and Calgar actually managed to kill the Tormentors here. And even though we lost 4 Bladeguard veterans, we did engage this Demon Prince over here to prevent it from falling back too badly. So this Defiler then killed a speeder here, and then we also got killed over here on the heavies by the Demon Prince. So all we had left was a few jump packs, the fallen back Bladeguard, and the Titus unit, which then moved up, and the Defiler, which ended the turn over here, was charged by our big Titus blob, and we rolled a double 1 on the charge. I thankfully paid the 1 point for the +2 charge strat, which means we barely made it in. Barely made it in, which was crazy unlucky, because it meant we couldn't kill the Defiler with only 3 Bladeguard veterans connecting to it. It was oath, by the way. So yeah, that is something that happened, and we ended up losing the Titus unit 2, and losing this objective over here. So all we had left in the last turn was a chaplain on the home objective, 5 scouts in the backline, and the only reason we won the game is because our opponent ran out of clock on turn 5, so our opponent couldn't do the action with the 2 spawns over here, which allowed us to sneak the scouts onto the enemy home objective, and because Lucius charged the Titus blob the turn earlier, and Titus got back up to fight on death and killed Lucius, our opponent had no way to recapture the home objective with no clock time. So yeah, we still had 2 speeders left, the Thunderstrike and a normal speeder, and we oafed the Defiler and finally killed it for Bring It Down, overwhelming force, and then we got the large plunder, and also the 5 points from the primary at the end of the game, and we barely won by 3 points. If our opponent was able to do the action, we would have lost by 1 point. So yeah, it came down to the last possible turn for us to make this game happen, and I am really glad that worked out, because I cannot see a way in which we win this matchup if our opponent doesn't make a mistake. Because yeah, the Emperor's Children, they don't have to play a dangerous game because of the primary, how hard it favors them. The Defilers are incredible against our list, because not only is most of what they shoot damage-free stuff, the Defiler also has access to a 1 CP stratagem with Ignore Modifiers, which, if you remember back to the Space Marine matchup, also came up with the unit. Turns out, if your entire defense relies on -1 to hidden wound, and your opponent comes with Ignore Modifiers for both, you are in big trouble. In the end, we managed to play a 3-2 with the first round loss, and In total, I was not very happy with this performance. Of course, there's always stuff that could happen, but I really need to figure out how to play the take and hold versus priority matchup. I think you need to get really aggressive. You cannot afford to play a slow game. You need to try and table your opponent as fast as you can, because if you keep exposing assets and your opponent shoots these assets while being safe with their big force until they can just step out and overwhelm you, it's just bad stuff. It is so difficult for you to get that hold more even once per game unless you are completely dominating, and the deployment zones leave something to be desired. It turns out the Victrix Guard and its once per game strength 6 and all of the movement tricks with Blood Surge and Reactive Move were actually pretty important for the list. My Marneus Calgar Bladeguard got caught off of the objectives all the time because I had to go and solve a problem off of an objective and then didn't have -1 to wound on the clapback, or I got intercepted while staging, which happened in a practice game, and that just felt bad all the time. So the Bladeguard just didn't perform as I wanted to, and the third speeder, which I could cut to get the Victrix back in, just didn't feel necessary. I think the list had enough firepower with 4 speeders before, and the third speeder was kind of just skirmishing around and doing stuff. Like, it never felt bad, and it's of course good to have more targets for your up-down, but in total I think the Victrix Guard was too important for this list to cut. Now, with that said, that was the big Castle Clash GT with the Rec Force. We finished 3-2 overall, which I'm not too thrilled about, but hey, you learn from your losses, and that's what matters. I do think I'm due for a bit of a switch in detachments, because the Vengeful Host seems like a very promising partner for the Reclamation Force. We can have the chaplain effect without having to bring a chaplain, so we free up 60 points by that, and we do get access to the Orcsbane guy and jump pack infantry with rerolls natively, which makes us more unreliant on Oath of Moment, which I really appreciate, and I want to see how good we can make that kind of list. But that for the next time. Courage and honor, Ultramarines, we march for McCrag.